Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lifford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. This week, we share with you 9 of the biggest lawn care mistakes and how to avoid them. Also, backsplashes are so popular, we'll tell you about the most simple way that you can install a backsplash in your house. Also, we'll be checking in with Chelsea on the Chelsea Ranch Revival. She just completed an awesome renovation on her hall bath using some materials I've never even seen. So you'll want to hear all about that. Also, we're going to share with you a couple different methods to remove paint from a wood wall and a completely different approach to removing paint from a piece of designer furniture. 2 completely different approaches. And what about a simple solution, Joe?
All right, I've got a quick tip on how to keep your glass shower doors clean using a product you'll find at the auto parts store.
Cleaning tips are always good, so let's get started. Hey, one thing we want to share with you, especially during this time of the summer, by now you've been out there mowing that lawn, and in some areas of the country are almost 100 degrees out there. So there's a lot of things that you really have to be careful when you're doing your lawn. Recently, Joe put together a great article about 9 of the biggest lawn mistakes that you want to avoid. I'm not sure I got that title right, Joe, but kind of take us through this a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, that was basically it. The 9 biggest lawn care mistakes and how to avoid them. Because just to tell you the mistakes doesn't help you much. But okay, here we go. We'll quickly go through these 9. Cutting the lawn too short. It seems like, well, if I cut it short, then I won't have to mow so often. Well, that's true, but it's terrible for the grass. So grass, as a general rule, should never be any shorter than 3 inches, and never remove more than 1/3 of the plant of the actual lawn itself, because trimming it too short removes much of the energy-producing top growth and puts unnecessary stress on the plant itself, and so it's more susceptible to insects and disease. So that's one thing. Mowing with dull blades, of course, Danny, we talk about this all the time. Dull blades will cut the grass, but if you look closely, it's actually ripping the grass, and it tends to make the lawn look a little brown, and then it becomes susceptible to disease, so don't do that. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, one of the things there, it's much easier to keep that blade nice and sharp. And like we've talked about before, buy a second blade. And
Right,
I'll tell you, even when you buy a brand new blade, just like when you buy a brand new shovel or axe or anything else, they're never as sharp as they really need to be. I don't know if it's, from people worrying about people cutting themselves or whatever, but hey, you can take a brand new blade, put it in your vise on your workbench, use your file, get you a good light, make sure you can see it real well. There's a number of other ways that you can sharpen those blades, but that makes it a lot easier. And also, when you're sharpening those blades, go ahead and clean the underside of that deck. If you haven't done that, when you put it mower up last, you'll find that there's a lot of things there that's hanging on to the underside of that, making the lawnmower heavier and also makes it more susceptible to rust.
Okay, next one is not testing the soil. In order for grass to germinate and grow really strong, it needs to have the right pH. And the pH is simply the measure of acidity and alkaline. And the pH scale ranges from 0 to 14. 7 is neutral. Most grass grows best with a pH between 6 and 7.5. So you can buy a little DIY soil test kit for, what are they, Danny? $10 or $15 at the home center.
That's right. Very easy,
soil.
accessible.
Bagging the clippings as you mow. Don't collect the grass clippings. That might sound counterintuitive, but instead, if you leave them on the lawn to decompose, they'll provide moisture and nutrients to the soil. The one caveat there is you don't want them to be clumped. If the clippings are clumped together, then rake them out, because otherwise they might suffocate the lawn. The next one is not dethatching. Dethatching is simply using a dethatching machine to rake out the thatch. Thatch is nothing more than dead organic lawn matter. It's like grass clippings and shredded leaves that form on top of the soil. And if the thatch layer is too thick, it can starve the lawn and eventually kill it. So if you have a small lawn, you can use a rake, a dethatching rake, but it's best just for medium to large lawns, just rent a machine, a dethatching machine. Another thing is people don't aerate, which is one of the most important things you do to maintain any healthy lawn. An aerator is just, you can rent one, and if you rent it with a couple of neighbors, you can really reduce the cost, because it only takes an average lawn. It might take you, how long, Danny? 20 minutes at the most to aerate a lawn?
Well, when you think about golf courses and how much work they put into getting those fairways looking as nice as they are, you can tell every year, at least once a year, they do some serious aeration there with the commercial type of machine that they run over. Because they have a lot of miles of or acres of grass they have to do. But in your own yard, it'll go very, very quickly. But one great tip is to go buy a few of those little flags and flag every one of your sprinkler system things there, because, boy, it will rip one of those up. You get all of those marked, and then it doesn't take long at all in order to do the aeration. And you can just basically leave it like that. But if you'll go to todayshomeowner.com and put in aeration in there, we'll give you some tips on how you can make a mixture of peat moss and topsoil and dress it out over the yard, which will look a little bad there for maybe a week. But the next time you get a good rain and those nutrients soak down into the holes that you've created, the grass will start looking really good really soon.
Okay, next one is improper fertilizing. Using the wrong fertilizer or applying too much fertilizer can do more harm than good. So you want to use the correct fertilizer. And here's this is a general guideline for fertilizing a lawn in March and April. If you have crabgrass, use a crabgrass preventive agent combined with a slow release lawn fertilizer. Then in May and June, you can treat dandelions and other broadleaf weeds with a dual function. It's called a dual function weed and feed product. July and August, you can look for pests and, if necessary, apply a grub control agent. And then come fall, usually September, October, you can apply a fall fertilizer. They actually have fertilizers just for fall, which will strengthen and repair the summer damage caused. And this way, the lawn will be ready come next spring. It'll get a nice, healthy start. Number 8 on the list is overwatering. Believe it or not, you can overwater a lawn. It's as bad as underwatering it. So as a general rule, most lawns require about an inch of water per week. And that varies, of course, depending on the weather. If it's raining all the time, that's not an issue, but in normal conditions. And finally, not raking up the leaves. This is a big one. No one enjoys raking, but if you don't rake up the leaves as soon as they fall, they can create a mat and kill the lawn. And don't ever wait until the spring to rake them up, because at that point you'll be starting from scratch because the lawn will be in such bad shape.
There you go. There's 9 of the biggest lawn care mistakes and how to avoid them. Just some little content there for you, a little information that'll help you have the best looking lawn on the block. It takes a little work, but now's the time to start doing some of these things and not making any of those mistakes. Time for our best new product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Because every family is different, the way each of us use our refrigerator is a little different as well. That's why LG made their smart French 4-door refrigerator with lots of features that allow you to use it the way your family would use it. For example, their full convert drawer gives you more capacity when you need it, and the ability to fully convert from 5 chill to freeze options with just one quick touch, depending on what your family needs at that moment. The external filtered ice and water dispenser is also flexible, so it can accommodate just about any container. At 12.6 inches tall, it can handle just about any size glass or pitcher, and the convenient measured fill feature lets you select the exact amount of filtered water in ounces up to 32. So many of us have the big water bottles these days, so this is a welcome thing that you're able to put it there, push the button for filtered water, and it'll fill up and stop while you're doing anything else that you might be doing. Now, there's also even dual ice makers for standard ice cubes, crushed ice, and LG's exclusive round craft ice. Plus, the door indoor with cold saver panel keeps the cold air in where it matters most so that food stays fresher longer. And the smart features allow you, of course, to control the refrigerator and freezer temperatures remotely anywhere you may be with your smartphone or smart device. So for more information on this LG Smart French 4-door refrigerator, log on to HomeDepot.com. Let's go to an email right now. Love to get an email from you. Todayshomeowner.com/ask is where you can go to send us those emails. And that's what Stephanie from Arkansas did. She says, I want to add a tile backsplash to my kitchen, but I've never done it before. Is this something I can do without taking classes or buying lots of special tools? Well, I'll tell you what. First of all, Stephanie, go to todayshomeowner.com and put in installing a backsplash, and you'll see what I'm about to describe to you. You definitely can do it. A backsplash really is a great way to kind of get your feet wet a little bit with tile projects, and it's also a great application for something we discovered a few years ago called Simple Mat, which is one of the easiest ways to install tile. Rather than applying a mastic adhesive like Thin Set with a trowel to your wall, Simple Mat is a self-adhesive sheet that just sticks right to the wall, then the tile sticks to it. So all you need is a pair of scissors. Not only is it a lot easier and less messy, you'll also be able to apply the grout as soon as the tile is installed on the Simple Mat because there's no dry time. And the company that makes it also makes a grout that's ideal for this application. We've used it a lot, called Poly Blend Plus. The only tools you'll need is a grout float and a sponge. So think about it. We're talking about scissors. We're talking about a grout float. We're talking about a sponge. And of course, if you do have to, depending on the tile you select, if you have to cut the tile, then you'll have to look at different ways of cutting tile that you're comfortable with. And again, all of that information is on our website, todayshomeowner.com. And also you can check out exactly what I'm talking about with the Simple Mat by going to thesimplemat.com.
DIY means sawdust, work gloves, and the right tools. But at the Home Depot, the right tools means more than hammers and saws. It means a mobile app with built-in image search. That's a tool. Access an entire rental department with a swipe. That's another tool. For any project, start to finish, this isn't just DIY. This is doing like never before. This is the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Download our mobile app to get started.
We got a lot of great emails this week, and would encourage you to send us one anytime at todayshomeowner.com/ask. This came in from Martha. How do you adjust a sagging hinge glass shower door?
Very carefully.
Yeah, you have to be very careful because that tempered glass is real easy to break, and a lot of those doors are very heavy, very thick. But I found a company that we bought a door from, and actually my wife and I installed it in our previous house. Never done that particular type of installation on a frameless door. This was frameless, so
right, yep.
The hinges clamp into the actual glass. So what you have to do when you're adjusting it, certainly it's a two-person job. If one person holds it and the other loosens up the screws on the hinges, and you just very carefully and slowly raise that up a little bit and slowly, methodically tighten everything back in, that's usually all that's necessary if it was installed right the first time. But the key thing on any of those doors, because of the weight of it, you want to make sure that hinge side is attached very well, and hopefully Martha's not experiencing anything where that's starting to come loose from the wall.
It is amazing how those hinges can hold up that glass.
I know it.
Because they're not going into a hole or anything. It's not like the screws, like if it was a piece of wood, the hinge screws would be going into something. These are just basically clamped on. And the door, the glass panels on the shower are typically 1/2 inch thick, and the door is typically 3/8 inch thick, slightly thinner, for that exact reason, to reduce the weight, but still that's a lot of weight. And the way I've got one of these, and it's sagged a little bit and I repaired it, is on the bottom there's a little sweep to keep the water from washing out of the shower, and it just stuck on, it just slips on. It's like a U-shaped plastic. Take that off, and that gives you a little bit of working room because now you have a 1/2 inch space underneath it. And as Danny said, have a helper there, and put a shim under there, 3/8 inch or 1/2 inch thick piece of wood, a couple of wood shims, just to hold it in position while you're inside loosening those screws. Because when you loosen the screws, of course, it's going to fall, and the shim will prevent that from happening. And inside that hinge is a rubber gasket. And if you can replace it, get a new, because that's really what's holding the hinge and the glass in place. So if you can replace that, fine. If not, just shim it up, raise it to where it needs to be and tighten it up. And you would think you can't over tighten these because you're going to bust the glass, but I don't know how this works. I'm not sure of the engineering, but you can just really crank down on that with a screwdriver, not a drill, and at that point it should hold. If it doesn't, then I would call a professional. Maybe they have to take off both hinges and replace both gaskets. But there is a way of fixing it, but I would attempt to do it that way first.
That's right. I would too. And that's a good point you made, not using a power drill. It's funny, I was putting together something the other day, and they specified that do not use a power drill because, it's just too aggressive in some situations. And even though we've gotten really spoiled by using those, sometimes it's better just to, just break out the old-fashioned screwdriver.
Take your yard work to the next level with the Ryobi Outdoor Products Giveaway at today'shomeowner.com. The prize package is made up of 5 tools from Ryobi's new 40-volt HP brushless line and is valued at over $1,250. A blower, a string trimmer, a pole saw attachment, a chainsaw, and even an auger. All cordless, quiet, and powerful. Enter for your chance to win today at today'shomeowner.com/giveaway. Giveaway runs through August 8th.
Right now, we're going to check in with Trey, who is trying to reverse a situation. Right, Trey? You have some paint where you don't want that paint. Tell us all about it.
Thank you, Mr. Lippert, and I certainly respect your opinion and your abilities. My sister and I inherited a house we grew up in, and my parents built in probably the early 50s. And in the 90s, sometime Mother redid the kitchen, and she painted over the knotted pine. That was I thought it was so beautiful. My dad loved it too, but after 55 years of marriage, Mother wanted to paint it, so it was painted. So it looks like a latex light color paint, and I'm trying to get it off without damaging that beautiful knotted pine that's under it.
Okay. Well, it's a challenge, I'll tell you, Trey, to do that. First of all, of course, it was very, very popular, very beautiful back in the 50s and 60s, where they would put the knotty pine, and I would suspect the surface of it has like grooves and profile to it. It's just does it have some ridges and so forth, or is it smooth?
No, it has the ridges, just like you're thinking. The patterned ridge, like it was done. Yes, sir. It was just beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful, depending on your personal preference. The challenge there is, without having a lot of flat surfaces that you can sand, you're really going to have to look at chemical stripping. Now, the good thing about when they painted over knotty pine paneling like that, they used a really strong, most cases, a very good varnish over that. So you've got your that paint. Chances are, most likely, it has not been able to get into the pores of that wood. So what I would do is I would go to the home center and I would get 2 or 3 different types of chemical strippers. Do follow the directions on it. Very, very important on that. And also make sure one of those 3 is a citrus-based stripper. Then I would come back in some little out-of-the-way area and then test and see which one of those reacts the best. And you might find one that it just goes right back to the original finish very, very easily, and then that would be the one you want to go back and get the extra materials on. But it can be quite a challenge. Joe, what about any suggestion that you might have for Trey on tackling this project?
Yeah, Trey, the first thing you said this is in a kitchen, so these are on the walls, or is this on the cabinetry?
It's on the walls.
Okay.
The cabinetry was painted also. When Dad built a back room like they did in the 70s, and it's a nice, beautiful, big back room, but it made the kitchen really dark, and Mother didn't like that, so she wanted to paint but yes, sir, she covered all of it.
Okay. When Mother wants it painted, it gets painted. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Or you don't eat.
Or you don't eat.
You don't get to eat.
So it's on the walls now, and this was painted in the 70s, you think?
No, it was the 90s.
Okay, good.
They redid, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was just going to say you might have to test for lead before you do anything, but if it was painted in the 90s, that's not an issue. Yeah, I think The only way to do it would be, I recommend, I agree with Danny, is to do it with some kind of chemical stripper, one that's as non-toxic as possible. Follow the directions specifically, especially with regards to safety gear and masking off areas. And as far as the V grooves, those you might have to just scrape the paint out. And they do, if you're going to get a paint scraper, get one that has a carbide tip on it, because it lasts a lot longer. The one I bought, I think I got it at Sears several years ago. It was a handle with 4 or 5 different blades that clip onto it. I'm sure if you went online, you could probably find a similar one. And those are great because you can switch the blades to get the one that fits the best, and just carefully scrape that out, because I'm not sure how you'd get in there any other way. The stripper might get some of it out, but not all of it. And then light sanding, you'd be back to bare wood, and you'd have to decide at that point what you want to do with it. You want the wood to show through, right?
Yes, sir. Well, now it's almost like if I want to keep the house. It's where I grew up, but
of course
I don't have to. I've already got a house, so is it worth even trying to take it off? I know that's kind of an advice and personal situation type question, but I'd like to try to get it back to the way it was, because it was just gorgeous. I mean, and we took the carpet up, and it's got the old time 1950s hardwood in it, and
right,
just built solid, Well,
Trey, what I would recommend is get a little bit of stripper, strip one board, and if it goes really easy and it looks good, fine. If not, you can always just paint it back, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Well, give it a try, Trey. Let us know how everything works out. I got a feeling that you're going to you'll be able to remove that pretty easily. A little, meticulous scraping here and there, and then you'll be ready to maybe apply a new coat of urethane over it to make it last another 50 years.
That's the plan.
All right, Trey. Well, thanks so much for being with us. Best of luck on it, and have a great weekend.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, our pleasure. Thank you. If you sent us an email recently, we're going to tackle as many of it as we can right now. And you can send us one at todayshomeowner.com/ask. That's what Michelle did from Virginia. And this is interesting, Joe. It says, I found an old dresser at a garage sale about 20 years ago, and I recently decided to paint it. So I applied a coat of primer and paint. Then I discovered that the dresser was made by renowned furniture designer Paul McCobb, and it's worth over $2,000. My question is...
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Right.
My question is, what would be the best way to remove the paint and primer? This is a different scenario when you're talking about a valuable... Now, it may... furniture may be valuable to you from a sentimental standpoint. It may be special to you there. Now, it may be worth $100, but to you, it's worth $5,000 because of the sentimental value. Here's a different scenario, though, that you actually have a valuable piece of furniture from this designer, and they painted it, which, everybody would know would reduce the value of it. What would you say to Michelle as far as the careful process in returning this back to its valuable state?
Well, to tell you the truth, I would say don't touch it and bring it to a professional furniture refinisher. Explain that the piece is a Paul McCobb, and she said it's worth $2,000. I've seen his dressers go between $4,000 and $8,000. So, obviously this is a smaller one, but it might be worth a lot more money. But you're right. I mean, it's too bad she didn't discover this before she touched it, because now it still might be worth a little less, because those pieces are typically worth the most when they've never been touched and have the original finish. So in this case, she's going to have it professionally stripped, and then the furniture refinisher will be able to see whether you can save the old finish or not. But I would, I think I would not touch it, because you might only reduce the value even further.
There you go. That's probably a great recommendation, because you get into some stripping projects like that, and maybe there's a little gouge that happens here, or maybe a little too much sanding here that can really end up affecting the value. So good advice there. Right now, we're going to shift gears and talk about a simple solution, which you'll see a lot of times there in the newsletter. Joe, what do you have for us this week?
All right, Danny. Glass shower doors are often covered with cloudy water spots and streaks. And one way to prevent that, of course, is just to thoroughly wipe down and dry the glass after each and every shower. But, that's a real pain. And if you're going to rush, you don't do it. And maybe you'll do it later. And, of course, you don't. So here's a better way to clean shower doors and to keep them clean. Buy a glass cleaner that contains a water repellent. This type of product is usually used for cleaning car windshields. So you can find it in an auto parts store. You simply spray it on and use a paper towel, or what I prefer is a microfiber cloth. If you've not bought any of these, they are amazing. You can buy like 12 of them for $10 or something online. And I use them for cleaning all sorts of stuff. They clean really well. They're very strong. You can wash them, and they don't leave any lint behind. That's the best part. But anyway, so you spray on the cleaner, wipe it off with a cloth or a paper towel. And then now, not only will it clean the glass really well, but it'll repel water just like it does on your windshield. When water hits it, it'll just run right off. So it'll make it a lot easier to clean. So that's the simple solution, cleaning your doors with a windshield water repellent.
Now, I have definitely used this on a shower that I had at my previous house, and we're using it, of course, at the one that I'm in now, and that definitely works very, very well. And I'll tell you, I have removed hundreds of shower doors over the years.
Yep.
Man, most people that I removed that were not aware of this particular tip. Because, their stuff just gets coated up on that.
You can't even see through the glass.
And I know it's this obscure piece of glass. And, it's obscure glass. Well, not originally. It was clear. So
right, it wasn't frosted.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
now frosted. Right.
Yeah. And I've seen people with showers where they have a large squeegee just hanging, on the wall.
Yeah, we have a squeegee in our shower for that exact reason.
Yeah, it's a pretty quick, easy way to solve that kind of problem. That's great.
DIY means sawdust, work gloves, and the right tools. But at the Home Depot, the right tools means more than hammers and saws. It means a mobile app with built-in image search. That's a tool. Access an entire rental department with a swipe. That's another tool. For any project, start to finish, this isn't just DIY. This is doing like never before. This is the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Download our mobile app to get started.
Now it's time for our podcast question of the week. This comes from Jenny in New Hampshire. Hello, I own a home in North Conway, New Hampshire, and we get a lot of snow up here. There are many trees around the home. The pitch of this roof is not that steep, and the snow piles up on it, and we have to shovel the snow off. I'd like to put a brand new metal roof on my home, but I've been told that the pitch is not high enough, and one contractor even suggested putting a new steeper roof framing over the existing roof. Is this necessary, or do you know how much of a pitch is needed for snow to slide off by itself? Thank you very much. Well, Joe, you wouldn't expect for us to get any snow questions right now, but
right,
someone's planning ahead and so forth. And, first of all, to build a roof over an existing roof for this purpose seemed like a tremendous amount of expense that probably is not necessary, but I'm really not sure what you would say in terms of the minimum pitch for snow to move itself off of there, because I go back to wet snow, dry snow, wind, things like that. But what would you suggest to Jenny?
Well, first, I've been to North Conway, New Hampshire many times, and it does get they do get a lot of snow up there. They're right at the base of Mount Washington, and it's beautiful up there, by the way. If you ever get a chance, go on up. Maybe not in the middle of winter, but go on up anyway. The minimum roof pitch for shedding snow is typically 6 and 12 or 7 and 12. It's referred to as roof pitch. It's actually the roof slope, but they're used interchangeably. And that's about 30 degrees. But on a metal roof, now that's assuming the roof is probably asphalt or wood, something like that. But for metal roofing, because it sheds snow so greatly, which is a reason you see a lot of metal roofs in snow country, because it does a great job of shedding snow. You can get a slightly flatter roof, not flatter, but less steep, I guess I should say. So most metal buildings can be as low as 3 and 12 or 4 and 12, but I think there's no reason to put a false roof on top of it just to make the roof steeper. So I would go with a metal roof, as long as you're above 312, 412 might be a little shallow. So as long as you're above that, I think any metal roof would work. Now, the downside of using a metal roof on a steeply pitched roof is when that snow comes off, I've seen it rip railings off of decks and bury things that you can't get till the spring. So definitely use roof guard, snow guards. Snow guards are just little metal that could be either bars like a railing or little individual metal pieces that you typically see like right over a doorway. Because you don't want to come out, slam your front door, and get buried by snow. So these little guards, these metal guards, help hold the snow in place until it has a chance to melt off. So the metal roof would be the way to go. And as long as you're above 5 and 12 or 6 and 12 roof slope, I'm sure should be fine.
There you go, Jeannie. Hope that helps you a lot. We appreciate you sending that question in, and we would encourage you to send your questions in by going to todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Also, we wanted to read you a quick review here that we also really love getting these reviews and appreciate you taking the time to do so. This comes from Liz in Arizona. I love this podcast, and the only thing better is their website and many helpful online videos. I'm a new homeowner, and I've tried many of the tips that are suggested. You make me brave enough to try it on my own, and I've saved a bunch of money. Thank you for your information and the fun. Well, Liz, thank you for taking the time to send us that. And if you'd like to send us any comment, any question, anything that you would like to share with us, again, that address for you to go to is todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Hey, thanks so much for being with Joe Truini and myself, Danny Lipford, here on this Today's Homeowner Podcast. We'll talk with you soon.